It's not a question, it's just would have been better if we'd come talk to y'all first before we went to all the vendor breakout sessions.
I'm really glad that you came and we got to talk.
Good afternoon, ICMA. Thank you so much for coming today. This is, I was talking to my team earlier as we were prepping for this session, and I was telling people I just need one person to show up. One. So thank you all. My name is Abhijit Verakar. I'm the founder and CEO at Avero Advisors out of Maryville, Tennessee, and we are an IT and management consulting firm that focuses at the intersection of efficiency and technology. We don't resell any product. We're not here to sell you the next greatest AI chatbot. We don't have a product. And our message today is, how do you do this practically? Because you've been through some AI sessions today. Everyone's showing you the latest and greatest and how we did this, that, and the other. The overarching feeling that I have about AI is that no one knows what's going on. And it's okay. And we're with you. My background is finance and accounting. I've got 2 master's degrees in accounting. And as I finished the second one, I realized I don't want to work in accounting. And then I fell into consulting, and I've done government consulting for the last 20 years. And I'm here with my team. I'm going to quickly introduce them. Clay Brooks is going to be my co-facilitator. Megan Seaton, Dave Dar, and these folks will help answer questions and get the discussion going. So before we really dig into it, I'm going to refer to my notes here. I should have put on my reading glasses. But we want to reframe AI in human-centric terms. There's a lot of noise going on about AI, machine learning. Everybody's talking about it. If you roam the exhibit hall, everyone's got the next greatest chatbot. But it's a chatbot, right? ChatGPT with a new logo on it does not make it the next greatest product. It's a chatbot. Chatbots have a place in the world, right? Where you are short of people at the customer service line, at the utilities department, and health and human services. Multi-language chatbots will be great once we figure those out. But I haven't seen one. I don't know if you have. So these applications, the promise of AI has not been fulfilled yet. And I've studied this quite a bit, right? I took a course at MIT for AI. I learned how to build applications, and all the Lego bricks exist. It's time to think about what it means to you as a city, as a county, as a government organization. And AI needs to enhance human interaction, not replace it. All this talk about AI taking jobs, AI is not going to take your job. Someone that knows how to use AI will. And we've heard this said many times. So today we want to reframe AI. We want to tell you that it's okay to not know because we're not certain. And we're consultants. We're at the forefront of thinking about these things. So that brings me to what we do other than talk about not knowing what AI is about. We do consulting for government agencies that are looking to modernize and enhance their technology operations. How do you become a modernized organization? How do you use technology to do services better, to become more transparent? That's what we do. And a lot of our work is around IT strategic planning, right? A lot of agencies that we work for are 20, 30 years behind in technology, sometimes by design, and that's okay. So we help them chart the path towards the future. How much are things going to cost? How do you fit all of this together? How do you start untangling this ball of yarn? By the way, we have a great podcast called Untangled. So AI has become a part of our service offering now, and we're not here to sell you anything. This is conceptual. I want to get people thinking about what this means. And when you go back into the vendor hall, give you questions to ask all the software vendors that have the next greatest thing. So with that, Clay, I'm gonna let you talk about the agenda, and we'll go from there.
Today we're going to be demonstrating some practical applications of AI and just going over a couple of basic definitions. There will be a quiz, so please take notes. And then together we're going to have some discussions about what an AI solution might look like in your organization. Now, AI is just a part of a good strategic plan for modernizing your IT systems, but we're going to explore what that might look like together. And then we're going to discuss some of the challenges and concerns that have been floating around the exhibit hall. I've been talking to a lot of people, and I'm very excited to talk to all of you guys as well. So what we're actually going to start with is an audience survey.
You can just do show of hands, right? How many emails you get every day saying, here, buy my thing, this is the next AI? Every day, every day. And you probably have seen some demos. The problem that I have with all of that is that it doesn't necessarily solve exactly my problem, but also I'm seeing all of these TED Talks with people talking about how AI is the future, it's going to solve everything. So what we're going to do today is actually, it's going to be an interactive session where we walk through solutioning an AI solution, what it might look like, right? When someone presents you a product next time, the questions to ask, how do you want to think about it? Do you have the goods at your organization to actually take advantage of this? It's akin to smart cities 5 years ago. Big buzzword. Everyone's talking about smart cities, right? And then you realize that you're already smart. You're doing smart metering, you're doing smart, traffic signals, and there wasn't much to it. There were some components. I think we're headed in the same sort of realm right now. So what are we seeing for results?
Around the vendor hall, and I was actually kind of interviewing. I was doing a study, a research study of sorts with everyone who's offering a tech solution. And there were only like 2 people that I talked to all of yesterday who did not have some kind of AI component to their product that they had recently added, usually within the last year. So I just wanted to see what the results of this survey would be for you guys. Show the results.
90%. Okay.
90%
As expected.
of people said yes to that. So that's about what I expected. Now the next question. I'll open the submissions. How comfortable would you feel implementing AI in your organization?
We're taking bets. Look, we're a consulting firm. We are at the forefront of research, and we should be the ones trying these things out. We haven't implemented AI other than ChatGPT, right? How many of you use ChatGPT? Majority. So 2 years ago, our worlds were turned upside down when ChatGPT was released. Remember waiting in line for the thing to work? And now there's multiple different versions of AI large language models that are available to us. But they can write letters and they can crunch data for you. What else can it do? Have we thought about what else these products can do for you? And there's always there's a sort of a hesitance in even talking about this. I was working with a police department, reviewing some products for their records management system. And the vendors were showing great products that automate the whole process of documenting a case. Like, if Megan gets pulled over again, what happens instead of people typing it in when they get back to the police station, the product did all of it. And I looked to the audience, which was, chiefs and deputy chiefs, and they said, don't even talk about AI, we're scared. Mm-hmm. And if we asked why, it was, well, IT says don't talk about AI. Legal says don't talk about AI. So we're just not going to talk about it. But we don't have officers, we don't have time to do this stuff. There's got to be a middle ground somewhere. So
I think the results are skewed by the audience that decided to attend this session. Yeah, most of you said you tried or you already did it. So I'd be really interested to know what that looks like.
I'm curious though, if someone said they've tried it, can we hear a quick story on how?
So we started using an AI tool, which is a closed LLM, where we've put in all of our staff reports and our agendas, and it helps us, we've just started doing it, it helps us generate staff reports and agenda items, because for those of you who work in local government, that's a real bane of our existence, and we're just starting it. but we're hoping it gives us a lot of efficiencies and saves us some time.
So you're feeding it agendas, old agendas, and then getting intelligence out of it. That's a great use for an LLM. Which one are you using, by the way?
So,
If you know.
yeah, it's Medicine AI. It's one of the vendors here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think we need to start with some definitions, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. And this isn't technical, okay? I'm telling you, I'm an accountant, finance guy. I think you're IT, right? Yeah, she's a software gal, ex-banker. So, we're your people. We're not techies. So let's go through this together.
Artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machine. This is an umbrella term for a lot of different kinds of systems, such as machine learning, generative AI, large language models, deep learning. All that is considered AI. So artificial intelligence simulation of human intelligence by machines. Machine learning has something that has been around for decades now in some way, shape, or form. If you think about it, like AI in its most simple, broken down form is a system making a prediction or a decision based on a process that is defined and then automated. So a coder, a programmer goes in and says, if you get these inputs, send them through the numbers machine, and then spit this out, right? That's the very basic machine learning concept. When we start to get into multiple steps or iterating back on that process, then it gets a little more complicated, but really, machine learning is something that has already been in place for quite some time. For example, the Center for Disease Control has been using machine learning for a long time to forecast flu outbreaks. So the AI model analyzes data from all different sources, because what it's doing really is it has to have that input, has to have a bunch of data. You know, those multiple lines of spreadsheets, 30,000 line spreadsheets that you have, those could be considered data that you could feed into a machine learning system. So imagine the kind of data the CDC has. They're sending it through a machine learning model to see where the next flu outbreak might be. So that's a prediction. And it helps them make decisions about where to allocate resources. So that's an example of machine learning. Now, deep learning is when it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So a neural network, right, is a simulation of neurons. And that's a weird way of saying there are multiple machine learning processes in a chain over the course of processing this data, and it might even go back to the beginning to change itself so that it makes those predictions differently based on what it's gotten out of the process before. So that's what the layered structure would imply. There's deep learning again. It learns. Instead of just being coded, hard-coded, it learns. That's the difference between machine learning and deep learning, is it can take that data and it can retrain itself. It can be trained even by brute force, by giving it different data to make decisions in different ways. Right? Are you with me? Does this all make sense so far? Okay.
An example on a great one is Skynet.
Or, City of Pittsburgh has implemented a while ago some smart traffic lights. And this has actually been pretty successful from what I can read online. It has reduced emissions. And believe it or not, I know it's kind of hard to tell when there are 10,000 people here for a conference, but it has reduced travel times pretty significantly. So what the system does is it controls the traffic signals in real time using that live traffic data. So that's what I was talking about with that loop. It's learning based off of the data, based off of, how many cars passed before this camera at 5 p.m. on a Thursday. It's learning, right? So that's an example of deep learning. Now, Chatbots. That's what you're going to see the most of. At least that's what I've seen the most of, aside from some predictive analytics at this conference. And that's when computers learn to read. Not only do they learn to read and say, this is how many times the word the is in this article, they learn to contextualize the text information that they're receiving. So they're interpreting, they're reading, they're analyzing. They're like, instead of being in first grade English, they're in ninth grade English. That's what natural language processing is you start to understand the meaning behind the text, and that's kind of what I mean by interpreting the context of textual data. Have you guys heard of how the city of Victoria, Australia has a model in their building plan submission site now? It is live. This is not this is not some imagined future, where people can submit their building plan documents, and then the natural language processing system reads through them and tells them what's missing or what is wrong with their plans. Exciting stuff, right? That's all I have to say. It exists. I'm not going to sell their software for them, but if you're considering redoing your building plan submissions process, just something to keep in mind, that this is out there already. Now, this is our last definition, and then remember, there's a quiz. So a large language model, where a natural language processing model has learned to read, a large language model has learned to talk back based off of the context. It's a more advanced version. It has to have all these components, right? All of these components build on each other. It has to be able to read, to learn to talk back, etc., right? So these systems, much like deep learning systems, have to be trained. They have to be trained to understand and respond to language, and they are trained using vast amounts of data. Calling back to that machine learning thing we talked about before, if you have, we're talking millions though, not 30,000 lines on a spreadsheet, but if you have 1 million conversations that it can look at and learn from, that would be an example of training the LLM. So that's what a lot of the chatbots that are being sold at this conference are doing. Whether you're giving them your data that you already have and they're hosting it on their servers, or they're using your servers and letting their program access them to create these chatbot flows, that's what's happening, is a large language model is being deployed. Right? Any questions? Yes?
Here's a silly one.
Okay.
I'm from a generation where we watched the movie War Games, and the computer got so smart that it eventually took over. What protections are built into this that allow us to stay relevant? That's
a great conversation to have. And as people who work in government, you know how important it is to follow the money. And let's just say the government can make policies, right? They can regulate the use and the design and the deployment of these AI models so that they have to go through certain reviews and pass certain checks to be legal. However, it's such a new thing that we haven't gotten around to it yet. It's jumped ahead, it's leapfrogged in front of itself here. But that would be the key to making sure that the AI overlord that lives in the cloud can't see everything we do and change our lives in ways we don't want. So whether you're talking about inside your organization or on a broader scale, AI policy needs to be looked at a lot more. So good, thank you for bringing that up. Other thoughts about this before the quiz? Yes?
I'm looking for something that can mine SQL databases. Right now, sometimes when you go into SQL, you need to use crystal reports. It takes people a long time to generate what you're wanting to do. And I'm looking for something that will mine the SQL databases and then extrapolate the information through the LLM when we ask a question and do that. Is that currently possible?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and you took my mic. What are you doing?
You know, bring
Yeah. Yes, but you need to have the data. Obviously, sounds like you do, and you need to decide. Back to Clay's point on policy, do you want to give access to that data to the rest of the what did you call it? The
that AI
Overlord.
watching us from the cloud.
Like, and let me decide for that, right? ChatGPT, the public free version, consumes all of the data you will give it, and then it's going to use it to learn things and get better, right? So the gentleman earlier answered the question, said we have a closed LLM. That means you have bought a specific version that does not let your data get out of that box. So
That's actually what the city of Hamburg in Germany did. That was the next slide. So you're right with me.
And that's what we want. We want a closed LLM that will mine our SQL database. But the part I'm getting stuck at is all these sessions I'm going to is how do you bridge that? Do you build an API? How does it make it from what you want to ask to the data?
So a couple ways to do it, right? The easy way these days is if you're a Microsoft shop, if you use O365 Azure, you can buy OpenAI's APIs. So in that way, you are sequestered to that environment, and it's not going out anywhere. And you feed it your data, and you choose which model you want to use. The model has fees associated with it, right, per token, and you figure all of that out, and that's how you connect the two. And we can go into deep discussion on that for days because there's no one way of doing it. And again, if you're stuck, you're not the only one.
And numerous vendors have started to white label that technology and sell it themselves as they manage that for organizations like yours. And we're here to make sure that they ideally do that properly and don't miss anything super important and comply with your policies and your values. So that's where we would fall into that equation.
And if there's AI vendors or vendors that have AI in their product in here, please feel free to call us out if you're saying anything that's not right.
Okay, let's move into our quiz. This question rewards more points for fast answers. AI is the blank of human intelligence processes by machines. Glorification, articulation, simulation, or origination. Yeah!
That's 100%.
Almost. One person.
Don't name and shame. No.
I don't think I can see, so it's fine. I don't even know who that was. But if you answered fastest, hey, you might have gotten the most points. Question 2 of 3 also rewards more points for fast answers. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blank, blank, blank enables systems to interpret textual data. Is the answer A, natural logarithmic predictions? B, natural language processing? Or C, neurolinguistic programming? Time is up, let's show the answers. Nice, we got a pretty good job. Natural language processing is the answer. This one was a trick question. I'm pretty proud of that. Okay, next one, the last one. Also rewarding points for fast answers. This has multiple options that you can select that are technically correct. Machine learning allows systems to make blank automatically. The answers you could choose from, and there could be multiple, are predictions. Hello. Decisions. PowerPoints. Iced lattes. Time is up. Let's show the answers. Yeah! Predictions, definitely. That was one of the historically most used machine learning. I see somebody over there like, yeah, I got that one right.
PowerPoints.
Decisions is also something that it can make as well. And PowerPoints, actually, whoever answered that, you're probably right. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my TED Talk on AI. I'm going to hand it back over to AV, and we can talk about how to implement these solutions.
Thank you, Clay. So again, remember, this is not a technical session. So the question you asked her was spot on, because we struggle with that too. Like, again, I took a course at MIT, and they didn't answer that question. I had to go answer that for myself. How do you actually connect these dots? And who do you ask? That's a really good thing to consider. Is your IT department leading the charge on AI? Are they thinking about policies and strategies, how to protect data? What can we do with large language models or any of these AI solutions out there? What do? I think you start with, if you're city managers or CFOs, assistant city managers, county administrators, you have a lot of business problems in front of you. You're not necessarily thinking, blinking lights and zeros and ones and coding. You need a problem solved. I think that's the first opportunity. Just don't worry about how you're going to do it. And you do this in your daily lives, right? Problems come at you from multiple angles, and you have to take them on and say, yes, I'll solve it. And therein lies the opportunity. If it has anything to do with data, if it has anything to do with predictions, reporting, analytics, there's a chance AI can help you with that, right? SQL database, if you have an old database that's dying, you need to move it. You need to, transcribe what happened 30 years ago in your old green screen to reports.
Or backlog of current applications.
That, spot the opportunity. And it doesn't have to be a technical opportunity. It has to be a business opportunity. What can AI do for me? And all of the reading, learning out there about AI will help you if it's not too technical, it will help you orient your mind towards it. You could ask AI, go into ChatGPT and ask it, can AI solve this problem that I'm facing? You'll be surprised at how many times you'll come up with, there's a solution to this. But again, how do you connect those dots, right? So number one, spotting the opportunity is very important. So again, the question is, how do we build these things, right? Or do we go buy these things? And even when you buy these things from a third-party vendor, you still have to think of what problem are we trying to solve here? What am I buying? Because a lot of times we sit in sessions with clients and they tell you about XYZ failed AI implementation that costs gobs of money and got nowhere. So what are we buying? What are we trying to solve? And two is digging into the data. Again, this is an often used word. Data is the new oil. Everyone's after data. Protect your data, privacy. All that's valid. And now we know why, because, the Facebooks and the Metas of the world made us, sign off and say, okay, yeah, you can use our data. And that's what they did with it. They built large language models over the last 15 years. So what about your data? Do you have the data that can help you solve the issue or the opportunity you saw in point number one? Now, where does this data live? If you have it, dig into the data. Before you start digging in, you're going to have to ask yourself, your IT team, whoever uses your major systems, right? If you're a CFO, for you, that is probably your ERP solution. You use Oracle, Workday, Tyler, what have you. That's your data. Where does it live? Does it live on your servers or is it in the cloud? Wherever it is, it belongs to you. So if you have the data, digging into the data, and that sounds vague, how do you dig into the data? You get exports, you get it into Excel format, you CSV, print it out, it's your data, and you dig into it. Clay, do you have more to say about that?
I sure do. So I think part of it, and I talked to a vendor just this afternoon, or they were talking about implementing some large language model that uses your database as its, data that it pulls from. It reads whatever documents you have in there, whatever numbers you have in there, and then it answers questions based off of that data. And there's a couple of problems with that. So first of all, we all know that AI does something called hallucinating. That's the technical term for it, because it's making stuff up that is not real. So like free education about this right here, one last thing, is it will often be wrong, especially at this stage in the game. And the quality of the data you put in it and the quality of the outputs they're related for sure. So the third thing, or is this the second thing? I have three things. This is the second thing. The second thing is if your data is a format that is not readable by whatever software you already signed the contract for, then you're going to have some problems getting that exported and into the right format for it to read. You mentioned a SQL database. It's probably pretty smart to think about asking your vendors whether that's going to be a compatible format and maybe talking about that with them before you sign anything, right? And the third thing is I don't trust. Like, they're great, right? But I don't think it's a good idea to trust that they're going to care if it's a readable format and if it's going to work, and if you even have the data that they're saying they're going to mine. So those are just some important considerations that you got to think about before implementing AI. That's my
Well,
3 cents.
thank you. And it goes back to policy setting, right? This all comes back to the business aspects of your daily lives anyway. What are your policies and rules about this thing? So digging into the data reminds me of a story. I was in a meeting with a mayor of a major city, and the conversation was around dashboarding. We want to have a screen this big that shows me the maps, where the crime's happening, where trash isn't getting picked up, and what the trends are for, where our permits are not getting passed, and does that correlate with poverty? Think about the connections there. So the mayor wanted to see all of this thing on a screen. And so we start digging into the data that did not exist. It's on paper, it's being recorded in their brains. There's no way to do a dashboard, right? So they thought of the solution they wanted. Step 2 doesn't exist. So what do they need to do now? They need to think about which systems will help them collect that data so that they can then put it on a dashboard. This is the same. If you don't have the data, you're not going to do anything with AI. What's 3?
I think I want to ask the audience what problems you were thinking about fixing with AI. You came to this for a reason.
Anyone have
What's on your mind?
burning question?
Yeah, I think I might go there.
Got a
Yeah.
question.
Problem?
Looking at using our agenda reports like everybody had been talking about for our board, we spend an enormous amount of time, it's typically in administration, just making sure they're right and making sure they're written correctly, but having some of that information to be able to do that for us would help us out tremendously.
Yeah, and there's been systems have been around that will, connect your written agenda to a video timestamp. All of that exists. But yeah, if you have the data, which if their agendas, they're on PDF format somewhere, you can feed into an LLM and have it give you historical information and maybe some predictive analytics if you are to believe what they come up with, right? So, because hallucinations or lying is real for AI. Yes.
My question is the value of these AI solutions when accuracy is important, and what I'm hearing is you can't always trust what it's going to spit out. So how do you bridge the value gap when I don't know and nobody can assure me that this is accurate?
I think you have to choose carefully which use case you're going to use AI for, because the large language model sellers, even Microsoft, who's the leader in this today, they will give you a 3 or 4 point disclaimer every time you use it. At the very bottom, they'll tell you this can be wrong, be careful. So yeah, it's evolving, sir. And this is why I opened this up with, I don't know. And if someone's telling you they know for sure, I wouldn't trust that.
I think that's why there's so many chatbots out there, because we know that it's good at talking and reading. That's about it. There's other systems that do math way better than an AI at this point, more reliably. And if you're gonna have it try to do math, you have to check it at this point. It's not ready to pull a number out of a PDF, right, and try to put that number back into context and do predictive calculations with it. It has to be in a certain format at this point in time. Or there has to be a chain of deep learning that they take it out, they put it in a spreadsheet, they put it in that format, and then they read that spreadsheet like there's a chain of systems happening, right? It's possible, but it's like a lot at this point. Yeah.
So just to jump to the chase, what are the top 3 local government applications that, in your experience so far, you have high confidence in utilization of AI?
The predictive analytics thing from the CDC, we know that works. It's been working for decades. The smart traffic lights that I brought up for the city of Pittsburgh, there's evidence that that's working.
Well, are you asking about like which product, like Oracle, like yeah?
And then why is that different to the higher level of confidence with those applications than some of these others that we say you also about?
How's that different
Than the other, you know? Why don't the traffic lights in Pittsburgh hallucinate?
That's good.
Probably because they were very expensive to develop.
No, and the quality of data, right? It's simpler. Traffic patterns are simple. It's been studied. ATMS has been around for a long time, and then now there's an AI layer on top of that.
That makes a decision based off of that. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
So, just to share with you all, in the system we're using to generate our staff reports, it's an 80% staff report. Everyone knows that they still have to write part of the staff report. Mm-hmm. And humans make mistakes. So what we're doing is just automating the routine stuff, but everyone's accountable. So even if you're using an AI tool or you're manually writing it or whatever, you're still responsible. So from our perspective, there isn't that much risk there because somebody's got to check it. So for us, it's more of a staff performance issue. It's just the same as my staff makes a lot of mistakes because they oftentimes take the last staff report, change a couple of things, and then make it the new staff report.
Yes. And then AI will do that too.
Right. So regardless of which, it has to be checked. So from our perspective, that, you know, we're looking at something that gives us 80 or 90% of the answer, but the final product that goes out has to be written by a human, checked by a human, and we're not going to be in a situation where the AI is writing the complete document that goes out.
I love that. What's your name?
Chris.
Chris, thank you.
That's an example of a good policy internally of how to use AI at work.
Well, again, goes back to, I don't think AI is going to replace humans. Someone that knows how to use AI will. So that's a great use case. What are we doing next, Clay?
What we're doing next is we're piloting a project. So I didn't talk a lot about the city of Hamburg, but the city of Hamburg in Germany, Hamburg maybe, they have this pilot project where they're using an internal chatbot, basically, which is one of the other applications that I was going to mention. And it's based off of the same concept that a lot of the vendors here are going to be talking to you about, where they take a closed set of data, and then they use that to help their internal staff answer questions and make decisions. So that's an example of a pilot. What they did was they took a small group of employees that they thought would be the best to get it started, and they used that small group to test it out, see how it worked, and then they iterated on that process in an agile manner before scaling it out. So, piloting the project, after you find the data to solve your problem, what do we do next?
Small pilot. And I just thought of something to your question, sir. I think there's a difference between generative AI and just using historical data to present the next set of possibilities. So it's the generative part of that is where the hallucinations come in.
Yeah, the large language models.
Is where it's learning to think and learning to act and respond to you and create new stuff. That's where it's not 100% perfect yet.
The CDC doesn't use a large language model to answer questions about influenza, for example. They use a tried and true machine learning algorithm.
Okay, so pilot the project, meaning keep it small, don't let it spread, test it, whatever your project is. That's number 3.
Yeah, because things like what Chris said are going to happen, right? You're going to say, oh, well, this is 90% accurate. It makes things really fast, but there needs to be a process in place to check the accuracy of the work that gets output. So there needs to be keeping it contained first before then scaling the solution. And then how do we scale that solution? It's going to be unique to every organization.
So it depends. It's been 45 minutes and we haven't used that. I mean,
I think that's a record.
It's a record for consultants. All right, so what do you mean by scaling the solution? Like, how do you scale it?
It depends.
Come on.
Because it depends on how ready your organization is for implementing AI. Like, does your staff have the skills necessary to use it already, or are they going to need training? Is everyone really gung-ho about it, like the people in the audience survey were? Like, yeah, I already did it. Or are they more on the fence, or even actually scared? They, like, you know that this is an application for this technology that's really going to help your organization, but maybe there's someone in power that is really against it for good reason. So there's a lot of situations that can crop up when you're implementing any technology, especially AI right now, anything new. And it's important to manage those properly, otherwise it's going to all fall apart.
Well, and in short, scaling is taking your pilot and applying to the rest of your organization.
Yeah.
All right,
First thing you do depends on who you are and what's going on. So challenges. Speaking of that one stakeholder who's very resistant, we got some challenges. Do we want to go in order? Or what are your fears? What are your concerns? What have you heard in terms of resistance and challenges to AI?
Yes, sir.
I think it's just because it's so new, and me being a city administrator, it's like I have the learning permit trying to teach people how to drive, and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, so I shouldn't be in the passenger seat. And I think that's a little bit, to help people feel comfortable, and they traditionally see me as helping them be successful, and I'm learning just as much. I don't mind taking the arrows or where things fall down. It's just, but now I'm accountable for their action too. So I have my own skepticism on being able to be successful in assisting them be successful in using it and navigating it. So I think I'm taking a lot of AI in while we're here, listening to a lot of different presentations with it being so new. So excited about it, a little bit leery. My new IT director comes from the cybersecurity world and certified hacker, so he's worried about the protection of our data and people trying to steal our data and access our system. So where are those barriers to entry, and just making sure we're smart with our decisions, because it's really fun, but it can also be very dangerous if people gain access to your information. So optimistic, but like leery at the same time.
So are we.
Yeah.
What are the challenges? Yes, sir. Okay.
I would just comment that to turn the table, we're also trying to identify when AI is being used, I'll say against us, and I don't mean against us, but we're finding that consultants give us a proposal that they're going to do work, and they're actually not doing the work. They're using AI to create the solution. We have local blogs like all of you do. They feed our staff reports into blogs and write articles that are wrong because it's getting the facts wrong based on what it's reading. Yep. So we're spending a lot of time trying to sort of defeat these tools because it's what is being put back at us too.
And that's terrible, right? That's just unprofessional use of AI. Right. You need different consultants. But also, it goes back to humans. You need to, if you hadn't caught it, right? That's just bad info out there. So
Everyone makes mistakes. Computers are just way more confident about it.
Yeah.
I think one of the fears we have is having staff be overly dependent on it,
Yeah.
to where it kind of handicaps them moving forward.
Yeah, we had that. You remember the OpenAI outage about 6 months ago? We use it a lot, not for the purpose that you mentioned, but we use Slack internally for communication. So the Slack channel's flooding with, what do we do? Oh, ChatGPT is down. Like, use your brains. And we actually said that, and it's a danger, right? I mean, we get too dependent on these things, and next thing you know, you've forgotten how to use this muscle. So again, something that's to be seen how it's going to play out. Yeah. Anything else?
I think like what you mentioned at the exhibitor hall, there's a lot of vendors, there's more and more vendors, and government procurement's not always easy. So I think it's going through the effort of choosing a vendor, going through the effort of implementing it, and then finding out they either got bought out, maybe they're going out of business, or consolidated, and all of a sudden you're having to move to somewhere else and put in more work to ship to a new vendor or go back out to bid. I think there's a lot of probably hesitancy about choosing the right one and not duplicating work if you have to like then choose another one or move your data somewhere else.
Yeah. No, that's a challenge. And procurement is a great use case to start playing with AI. Like, document heavy, text heavy processes. I built a pilot for a client that took a contract, ran it against Tennessee state code, and told the procurement agent if it's the first pass. Does this meet code or not? Is it violating something? And I built it for this agent and I sent it to them. And I followed up a couple of weeks later and I said, did you check it out? Because it'll solve your staffing problem. If you have 3 people doing nothing but checking code, that you can't fill those positions, this is going to help you. I get an email back and they say, haven't got to it. There's too much work to be done here. I'm reviewing too many contracts. So there's a challenge too, just trying this out.
That's number 4.
Yeah.
That's scale. Some people go to number 3 and then it stops.
Yeah.
And then whatever you paid for that solution, you don't get as much value out of it as you could if you stop there. There's a lot of organizational change management and training and just iterative review that needs to happen to make sure that implementation is a success.
Okay. What else do we have? We have 10 minutes.
We have a list of possible challenges that we could use as talking points. We have security, that was mentioned already. Not only security, but also privacy. If you're sending your data into a cloud and it has people's HIPAA in it, like you could get in huge trouble, right? So you gotta make sure you know what's in that data that you're possibly giving to somebody to just use how they wish, perhaps to use to improve their own software. Think about that. That's something that I've been thinking about. Any other thoughts about security? There's other things. There's a lot of other things.
All right, let's.
Transparency. If you don't know what's going on inside of it, how are you going to explain that to someone? And I think that's a big problem these days as well. Yeah.
My concern is, am I talking to you or am I talking to the simulated you? Because I have a feeling that here in the real, short future, if I actually have the audacity to call you or City Hall or my pharmacist, am I talking to a person or am I talking to a simulated person?
Yeah.
And I think, yesterday I think the guy showed the city that was using the virtual person on the website to ask questions and stuff like that. My concern about it is, I said yesterday, I think that I'm naive and think that government is still of, by, and for the people. Like when I'm hiring, I don't know whether or not I'm actually hiring you or I'm hiring ChatGPT. So, I actually want to, with my interviews, especially interviews, do a writing sample for me in front to see whether you can actually write. Because I have a 17-year-old as well. I proofread his stuff, and I'm like, this isn't you, buddy. This word. I'm all about change and stuff like that, but I'm concerned in a very short time. I don't know whether I'm talking to you or the simulated version of of you. And when you text a cell phone company or a car dealer, I can already tell that I'm not actually talking to a person on the other side. I'm talking to a chatbot. But I think that is going to come up in video form, audio form, and it's going to get to the point where I have no idea whether it's a human being or a simulation.
It's happening every day, right? We get spoof emails all day. Hey, transfer X amount to this account instead of this account, or go get gift cards. We deal with that every day. We do, right? People go buy gift cards because someone claiming to be me texted them. It's a challenge. And then I'll tell you it's not a cool story, it's funny. I was messing with one of those AI video creators. So it created my avatar. So it took my likeness, fed it into the thing, and I gave it a script. And then it made, a script with my voice. And it created a video of me saying things. Now, if you know me, you would have said, it's kind of weird sounding you. Like, that's odd. So my wife is next to me, and I show her this. I'm like, hey, look. She's like, that's AI? Okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, so I keep working. And then a video of me actually speaking somewhere shows up. And she says, that looks more like you. And it was me. So deepfakes, I'm shocked that it hasn't become a bigger issue in this election cycle yet. But I don't know. I think we should have called this, I don't know, the presentation.
The transparency thing is big. I think there's policy decisions to be made about whether we put on our website, this chatbot is an AI or this chatbot is a person, right? That's something to be discussed. Another thing is, if you have a simulated person on the other line, who is it simulating? Who is it? Like, what decisions are being made, and what are those decisions modeled after? Because you have to give it a program to follow. And whose brain is that simulating? And whose values is that simulating? Are they yours? Are they your organization's? So just a whole lot of philosophical and ethical implications are going to come out of this. And this is almost the end of the talk, but it's really the beginning of the real one. Right? There's a lot of challenges to consider, and we've been considering them. We've already talked about data.
Yeah.
What are some data challenges? We don't need them. We already talked
beat that horse.
Yeah, let's keep going to the end.
All right, well, again, not a sales pitch, but where do you begin? Talk among yourselves. Obviously, this comes back to strategy, policies, and what is our stance on these things? How much are we willing to take on the risk that is presented by AI? Because the promise of it solving a lot of our challenges is real. But where do you begin, and how do you actually think about this? How do you incorporate this into your citywide, countywide policies, your long-term strategy, your technology strategy is really, really key. So if you need more information on us or what we do to offer solutions to those hairy questions, QR code will lead us to all of those options for you.
Among other things.
What?
Among other things.
Among other things. Well,
Thanks for giving us that 2 minutes.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us today. If you have other questions, I think we can stay here as long as I think we have this room till 4. Yeah. So any other questions before we wrap? Or yeah.
It's not a question, it's just would have been better if we'd come talk to y'all first before we went to all the vendor breakout sessions.
I'm really glad that you came and we got to talk.
Well, thank you. You have our info, and the conversation continues. So thank you all.